Say hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the SPUR Student Experience panel. My name is Sarah Rhodes. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm an academic advisor with the Rouser College of Natural Resources, as well as the SPUR Fall and Spring Coordinator. I will be serving as moderator for this session. Also assisting me with the moderation of this information session is Temple Byers, our summer SPUR coordinator and our CNR scheduler.
Hello, everyone. My name is Temple Byers, pronouns she, they, and I welcome you to this event. This is going to be fun.
Amazing. Thank you, Temple. So to start us off, I would like to discuss with you the outline for today's information session before introducing our fabulous panelists. As you can see, you have all been muted. This has been done to prevent any background noise from entering the session, as well as prevent too many people from talking at once. In addition, please consider turning off your webcam to save bandwidth and prevent lag. After we introduce our panel and go through some basic information about the SPUR program, we will open the Q&A feature and you can send us all your questions. Temple and myself will be monitoring the questions and will direct them to the panel in an orderly fashion. We expect all participants to abide by the UC Berkeley principles of community so that we can maintain a safe, caring, and humane environment, and we'll be removing individuals who violate these principles. Lastly, we'll be recording this session and the Q&A log. Now that we've gotten all of the logistics out of the way, I'd like to introduce our three panelists. Joining us is Montse Campos, Quentin Muñez, and Jordan Taki Eden. Panelists, please introduce yourselves and share your name, pronouns, major, and the SPUR lab you were in last fall. We can start with Montse and we'll go in alphabetical order after that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Montse. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a senior. I don't know if that was one of the questions, but I'm majoring in nutritional sciences, specifically the physiology and metabolism route. And I was in Dr. Susana Matias's lab, which is a nutrition-related lab analyzing a nutrition class that is offered here at Berkeley.
Take us away, Quentin.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Quentin. I use pronouns he, him. My major is society environment. And last semester, I was able to work with Meg Mills Nova, working on contested hydropower dams. So mapping those dams using Esri and ArcGIS software. So yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jordan Taki Eden. I'm a third-year transfer. And my major is environmental economics and policy. And after this semester, I will also be adding a data science major. And I was in Professor Kate O'Neill's Zero Waste Lab. And it was multiple projects, and I was part of the dispatched goods group. And what we did is we did stability testing and a couple other things for an organization called Dispatched Goods, which basically are trying to create reusable ice packs. So that's what I was part of. And like we use like programming, stuff like that to go about that.
Amazing. Thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate you being here. I know the students really appreciate you being here as well. I want to start by giving us a quick overview of the SPUR program. The Sponsored Projects for Undergraduate Research program encourages faculty and undergraduate students in the Rouser College of Natural Resources to collaborate on research projects by providing grant to support their joint project. The funding for this program is generously donated by Rouser College alumni. Students may participate in the SPUR program by applying to a faculty-initiated project or by creating a student-initiated project. This panel will be highlighting how to navigate applying to a faculty-initiated project. Currently, students can submit their applications for up to 3 faculty-initiated projects between now and January 5th at 5 p.m. To apply, you will need a resume, personal statement, and unofficial transcripts. And some SPUR projects also require an interview before selection. We have a couple questions that we want to start off with, and I'm going to list them all now so that you as the audience can start thinking about them. The Q&A feature is open so that you can start submitting your questions as well. First, what do you know now about SPUR that you wish you knew when you were first applying to SPUR projects? The second question will be, how did you navigate the resume and personal statement for the SPUR applications, and what resources did you use? And third, what did the supervision look like in your fall SPUR lab? Did you primarily work with a faculty or postdoc or graduate students? So I'll go ahead and get us started with question number 1. Panelists, feel free to raise your hand to start speaking. Question number 1 is, what do you know now about SPUR that you wish you knew back when you were first applying to SPUR projects? Quentin?
Yeah, I can share. So I'm actually I transferred in last year. And I would say that something I wish I knew was you don't necessarily need research experience to apply to a position. I think what's most important is you voice how enthusiastic you are about the project. And so I think that's really important. So yeah.
Jordan?
So a main thing that I learned over the course of this that I wish I knew before is that it doesn't really matter what your like major maybe or your career goals are. If you have the passion and you don't even need experience in that area, they'll find a place for you. Like for example, like me, like I don't want to go into like, for example, reusable ice packs after I graduate. However, I was able to use the skills that I do have. And that's a big thing, like especially like personal statements. What you're going to want to do is like show your skills and like how they can be applied, and just don't try to say the skills that you only think may suit the job. Paint the best picture of yourself, because they'll find a way for you to make the most out of the skills you have and your experiences.
I agree with both of the panelists, and just adding on to that, I think it's also important to put your interests first. So when you are looking at the projects, there's multiple projects, and ultimately you really, although you can choose something a little bit out of your field, you want to choose something that you're interested in, because I find that's where I do my best work. And that's where, when comes time to do your personal statements, where you're going to shine through and really show that you want to be a part of this project, because there are a lot of applicants. So if there's something that really sparks your joy or sparks your interest, then you really want to go for those projects and put your all into them so that you are a good candidate.
Great, thank you all. Yeah, I think we covered like enthusiasm for the projects being really important to highlight, having an interest in the project, something that you want to spend the next, several months working on, and then also not pigeonholing yourself, right? And assuming that like the project that you apply for is going to be the end all be all, but that applying for this project, you can find a space within that project that aligns with your strengths. Great. So we can go ahead and move along to question 2. How did you navigate creating resumes and personal statements for the SPUR applications, and what resources did you use? Jordan, your hand's up. Do you want to start us off?
I forgot to take it down, but yeah, I can start off. So the main thing that I would say, at least for the resumes, is there's like, me personally, I was in a professional organization, so like I was able to use like the resume like tips for that. So just gonna put a little plug for anyone who might be of Middle Eastern identifying, join the Middle Eastern Business Association, and they'll be able to help you with that type of stuff. And then I know there's a couple other ones, like I'm also Hispanic identifying as well, so like Raices and stuff like that. They also do great stuff like that. So there's just always organizations out there that are wanting to help you, both like cultural and just like interest wise. So those are things that I would, for the resume, for sure go about doing. And then for the personal statements, it's, don't try to make, kind of like with the college applications, don't try to sound too generic and like you're just trying to answer the questions like a checklist. Like, try to differentiate yourself from all the other panelists, because everyone who's going to be applying is extremely smart, very qualified. So they want to see what makes you you. So for example, for me, like when I was doing the zero waste lab, sustainability is like a big part of like my identity, like what I want to do, because so I talked about how like I'm from Nicaragua and Colombia and Syria. So and like sustainability in those countries is like a big thing. So I kind of drew my personal experiences, my passions from my home countries to like kind of show that's myself, because you know, I don't think that there's many people who are from Nicaragua, Colombia, or Syria. Now, if there are, you know, hit me up, you know, but other than that, like, you know, just really show yourself and don't just try to be another name or resume.
Definitely. Oh, sorry. I think adding on to what Jordan said, you really want to stand out and kind of make yourself a well-rounded applicant. So really talking about any experience that you have, really. Before the SPUR, I hadn't participated in research before. And so there was nothing firsthand that I could talk about lab-wise, but there was multiple volunteer projects that I had probably been a part of that I added into my application and my personal statements. And just general interest, once again, I think for me, working in the nutrition lab with Dr. Matias, she focuses a lot on like food access and accessibility, specifically here on college campuses. And so you can very much, if you relate to the topic, you can talk a little bit about that. And then once again, for navigating the personal statements, make it personal and make it truly about yourself. But you do want to make sure that you hit all of the little questions. I think for me, that was one of the guiding questions. It really helped me out to make sure I was completing the task, if that makes sense, because a lot of times you can stray away into like little tangents, but making sure that you hit all of those little bullet points in one way or another is going to really make your application a strong one. And then as far as resume building, I found the Career Center to be super helpful. So I know you can go in for an appointment on like one-on-one, but personally, I just use their website and they have a bunch of pointers on there that are super duper helpful. And they tell you what you should include, maybe things you can leave out. And I believe they also have samples. So if you don't have a resume at all, you can check out a sample, and that's always super helpful.
Yeah, I agree with both of the panelists. I think that really paying attention to the description and, you know, maybe incorporating some of your work experiences or on-campus experiences, community involvement, somehow tying that into the description would be great. I also think that the Career Center, just looking up Career Center online resources resume is really great for not only the resume, but the personal statement. And then lastly, I would say maybe tap into your peers, friends, ask if they can read over it, see if it looks great. And I think that's really helpful as well. So.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. Those were such great answers. And I hope that our panelists really take those to heart when they're working on their materials this week and next week. Okay, our third question is, what did supervision look like in your fall SPUR lab? Did you primarily work with a faculty or a postdoc or a graduate student? And what did the supervision look like in general for you guys? Take us off, Monse.
So my lab consisted of recording biometric data, so things like blood pressure, carotenoid levels. So we had to do visits with participants in the study. So in the beginning, my supervision was mostly done by the postdoc working with Dr. Susanna. And it was a lot about training and learning how to take blood pressure and things like that. And that's very specific to my case, but we had meetings with the head of research every week. But for the most part, when I was actually in the lab, it was a lot of the working with the postdoc. And then I also got to work with another SPUR student. So we were working together and we were learning kind of the logistics. And then as the semester went by, once we learned how to do everything, we were able to take visits just on our own. And for the most part, we worked together, but on times that maybe she had class or something, then it would just be me. But we always had the postdoc's email and number to contact if we needed any help. And then once again, towards the end of the semester, we had a lot more weekly meetings and we got to work as a team. So with a postdoc, the head research, and then my partner SPUR student.
Yeah, I can go next. So I think all of the experiences sort of vary a little bit. I actually worked with one of the faculty members and another SPUR student. And so our work didn't really require us to go into the laboratory. So we met once a week and we basically got instructions on what to do for the week. And we also could sort of give our feedback and assess each week. So I think those are really helpful to not only like collaborate with the other SPUR student, but also learn from the faculty. And so I think that, you know, like working with like everybody is like a really great experience to, you know, kind of showcase.
So for me, like the main structure of the advising team, there was the head of the lab, and she really wasn't there because she's also, I think, the associate dean of college. So she has quote unquote bigger fish to fry. And then we had our doctorate student, and she came in a couple times to like talk to us, but she was mainly doing her own thing too, because I think she was in Chico or Napa, so like she's not really in the area. And she's also working on her postdoc. So we had was two student undergraduate leads who were the main people who we're in contact with. So shout out to Annie Miller and Emily. I'm gonna butcher her name. I think it's Cube, I think. But it's like they were amazing. Like that's who we were constantly in contact with via Slack, email, phone numbers, etc. So that's the main way we were talking. And then obviously with your group mates was the main way for communicating.
Great, thank you all for sharing. It sounds like the supervision really varied depending on the lab that you were in. Okay, so I'm going to now shift us to our questions coming from the students. So first off, and also feel free to like panelists raise your hand to answer the question. If we're applying to more than one project, do we submit different applications for each project?
So I can take that one. Yeah. So what you're going to do is when you submit one application, and the questions I believe on some of them are actually slightly different. So like some of them do require certain other supplemental materials, I believe. But what you're going to do is they will look very similar, but you will need to fill out a different one for each one. And then after you do it and you refresh the landing page it takes you to, you will be able to see all your applications populated.
Yeah, does anybody else want to add on to that? Oh, go ahead, Quentin.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think Jordan covered it. I actually only applied to one, so can't really speak on that. So yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you both. So I would say that if you're applying to more than one project, Jordan's right, like it is going to look very similar from each one, but that you do want to kind of like tweak and tailor specifically your personal statement to the project you're applying to. You know, I've heard from professors that they can tell if you're just like using the same personal statement for each application. So make sure to tailor it specifically to the project you're applying to, and really trying to shine through that personal story and your interest to that project. Great. So next question. Seems to be more of a structural question about the personal statements. So how do we approach the personal statement, i.e. formality, opening sentence, length, etc.? Go ahead, Monse.
I would say make it personal. From what I remember from applying to colleges, the first sentence was always meant to like kind of grasp you in. So I remember making my SPUR applications similar to that in the sense where the first sentence was personal to me and would help the reader, in this case, the the head of research who you're applying to, like better remember you or get to know you a little bit more, because ultimately this is the only thing that they're getting to read from you. And so for them to share their projects for you to work on, you really want to make a small connection in some sense. So I would say beginning with a little bit personal, I applied to mostly nutrition related projects. So I always started with as a nutritional science major, and then whatever the project was talking about. And then I think it also asked about length. So I pretty much just typed as much as I could. And then I went back and tweaked it. I want to say most of my personal statements were around like 400 words to 500, but do as much or as little as you can. Ultimately, it's whatever you want to say and want to share, but there's like no right or wrong to writing your personal statement.
I can also add on, I totally agree. And I think that maybe include something that is not on your resume and something that will sort of kind of draw the reader in and, think, well, if they're not mentioning this on their resume, then they must be really interested or they must have more experience. So, and I think I totally agree with making it really, tailored to yourself and really expressing your character and your like motivations in the future. Maybe bring in how this will help you achieve your goals in the future. How will this research experience really elevate your experience here at Cal? So, and lastly, I would say, again, the Career Center has a really great, I think it's like a template for personal statements. So I would take a look at that as well.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, can I add one more thing?
Yeah, go for it, Monse.
I was just going to say also for your personal statements, you can also use it to expand on what's on your resume. So if you want to talk about something in specific that you did and something listed under your resume, and then how you can bring those skills to the lab that you're applying to, is a great way to like draw in your reader a little bit more.
Great, thank you, Monse. Another question is it common to continue working on your SPUR project even after the semester ends? AKA, like if they offer you a continuation?
I can speak on personal experience. I actually was offered a continuation into the spring. And so although it wasn't a part of SPUR, it's an independent study. So I don't know how that will look like for you individually, but let's say you really enjoy the experience. You felt like it was a really, rewarding time, and the professor also felt like, I think this could keep going, then I think it's a case by case basis, but there is an opportunity to continue.
So I know at least for my lab, it depended on the project. So like mine personally was a 1 semester thing. However, one of the other projects, I think it was like working on like a Haas reusable program at the School of Business. So I know that like the first semester was more like the design thing. And then the next stage of this semester is going to be the implementation of it, like the expanding of it. So I know that's like a 2-step process, but I don't know whether or not they are like were offered return offers on that, or if they will just apply again and probably get preference for it.
Great, thank you, Jordan and Quentin. I'd also like to add that it is common and not common for it kind of, again, depends on the lab, for students to get an opportunity to continue. Essentially, like the professor needs to renew their project and let me, the SPUR coordinator, know that you'll be continuing, and then it can get approved for renewal, which is really great and wonderful. But we also have those rules so that we can make sure as many opportunities for new students to get research is possible as well, because that is the main goal of the SPUR program, to provide that opportunity to students who don't have any research experience. Okay, moving along, should we include non-relevant jobs on your resume, i.e. a summer camp job or tutoring?
I did. I think I did it, one, to fill up my resume a little bit more. But also I think it just shows how well-rounded of an applicant you are. I would say maybe limit it to just one, but if you need a little bit more on your resume, then I think go ahead, and you can always find some skill that you learned from that job that you can bring into the lab. So just finding those ties is like the key to adding those onto your resume.
Great, thanks, Monse. Yeah, and I'd just like to add on, like, as a barista, you know, you gain time management skills and keeping a schedule and interacting with customers and collaborating with coworkers. So like those jobs are relevant because they have taught you really relevant transferable skills that can definitely be applied to these research projects and these lab spaces. Okay. Moving along, here's a question that says, do you generally need at least some technical experience to be successful in SPUR, or is it possible to get started without any specific research skills?
I think it is possible to get started without any research skills. I mean, I never really had any research experience going into this past semester, and I was selected. So I think you definitely don't need any research experience. With that said, I would definitely include some skills that you learned from classes. So any technical skills you learned, and pay attention to the job, sorry, not the job description, but the research position, and see what type of skills they're looking for, what are the requirements. I know some of them have really strict requirements and some don't. So I think paying attention to the description and sort of matching what you currently have and what skills you have is really important.
So I would honestly say that one of the biggest research skills that any applicant can have is actually one that you really don't need to obtain, whether like in like the classroom setting, and that's interest for the topic. That's a big thing that they're going to be looking for, because you might, you know, have a doctorate in like mathematics or something like research, right? But if you are presenting yourself as someone who really doesn't care and like, you know, I can take it or leave it, they're really not going to want you there, because, you know, you'd be kind of a difficult person to be working with. So just showing your interest in the topic, and show maybe your experiences and like why you're interested in the topic, would be a way to supplement maybe any you know, lack of skills in a certain scenario. But also that would also give you the opportunity to, those skills that you do have, to show how you may be able to you know, put those into research. So for example, the barista example, you know, that might not be explicit research skills. However, you can touch on your due diligence and your project management and your ability to handle multiple tasks and communicate with people, because that's those are big research skills there. So there's always ways that you can like look at it, kind of, you know, just kind of adjust your perspective on your skills, and that'll give you the ability to actually show you in the best light.
Great, thank you all. Another question is, if you have taken a class with a professor leading the project, is it relevant to, sorry, if you have taken the class with a professor leading the project that is relevant to the research, can you reference that in your personal statement?
I think you definitely can. Like, I don't think there's any rule against that. I would just say you want to make sure that you did pretty well in the class, or that you kept, say, good communication, maybe went to office hours and things like that, just so that the professor knows that you're a good student, essentially.
Great, thank you. Would you recommend waiting to apply to faculty projects after your first year?
I would say yes, not because of experience or anything like that. I think it's just a little bit more of the time commitment. A lot of the research projects are a huge time commitment, depending on which one you apply to, of course. But I know as a first year, I really struggled academically. And so most of my time was going towards studying and completing my assignments. And I personally don't know how I would have been able to handle research on top of that. But just for that reason, but totally up to you.
Yeah, I agree also. I think it's up to the individual, however comfortable you are with time management. And I mean, there is no rush really to sort of do research all 4 years, in my opinion. I think, really enjoying your first year and meeting as many people as you can and doing well in classes is equally as important. So, I think it's up to the person, but you should definitely still apply. But, you still have a couple more years to, apply. And yeah.
From the transfer perspective, because instead of 4 years, we get 2 years. So that's one thing I would just want to say is don't be discouraged to do it. Is completely doable. So like last semester was my first semester here, and I actually felt it was more beneficial than harmful to get into research immediately, because it gives you an opportunity to meet like-minded individuals and like get a foot in the door of the research community. Also, so that you don't feel overwhelmed, trying to get into research, whether if you're planning on going to graduate school or like looking for a job, compounding all of that with also trying to apply for research may also be an additive stress that you don't need going into your final year of college. So that's something that I would just put out there, is that it is doable, and it's actually, in my opinion, it is also quite helpful for trying to find a sense of community at such a big school.
Great, thank you for that. And this one I'm actually going to direct to Jordan as one of our transfer students. So the student is asking, if I'm a junior transfer student, should I include unofficial transcripts from my community college or just Berkeley?
That's a really good question. So I transferred actually from UC Davis, but I would presume the principle is the same thing. So what I did is I did include my unofficial transcripts from UC Davis. And also, since I took courses at a community college when I was in high school, I also did the same thing to kind of show like where my academic course load came from. And then also what you could do is when you go to the academic report in Cal Central, it'll like show your breakdown. It'll like show like, maybe X amount came from AP exams. And the school already has those like registered for you, so you probably don't need to show it for that. But then it also shows like exactly the schools it came from. So like me, it's like UC Davis and like my community college that I came from. So it breaks it down all there. But what I would do is in the personal statement, you could also put like a little PS note. That's what I did on mine, is like showing that my transcripts are from a community colleges and also from my former university, because this is my first semester. But then like this semester, what I decided to do is just put my transcripts, because there is my academic course load, and then it's just registered there with all the units from those courses. But you could also, if there's relevant course materials, for example, let's say you took a programming course that and the title says like, C++, right? And like one of the requirements is that you could also include the transcript just to show that you have that body of knowledge.
Great, thank you, Jordan. Another question is, how competitive is it to apply to SPUR projects?
I'm actually not too sure. That's a good question. I mean, I'm assuming it is competitive, but I think it really depends on the project you're looking for and whatever you're interested in. So I think it varies between projects.
In my experience, it was pretty competitive. I think Quentin was very lucky. He only applied to one, and he was able to get the project. Unfortunately, this was my second time applying to SPUR. So the first time I didn't get called back for any of the projects that I applied for. But then last semester I did, and I think it really was a difference in the interest in the projects. I think the projects were more in my field and were more of my interest. So that kind of shined through in my application. But I think SPUR is pretty competitive in my opinion.
Yeah, from the applicant side of thing, like we don't know the exact numbers. Maybe that would be something more for Miss Rhodes to go about. To like get like the exact numbers on that. But I would say just don't be discouraged by maybe if you don't get it to your first time, but also the main thing is don't try to do something also that you wouldn't want to do. So like, because that'll show up, you know what I mean? Like if you're just trying to be like, I don't really want to do any of these. I would just recommend don't push yourself through that because, it's going to shine through. And also if you end up getting it, you'll be miserable. So just make sure that it's a good fit for yourself, more or less than just trying to get your foot in the door of research. Because going back to that thing, if it's overwhelming, you don't need the added stress, especially, at the beginning of the year.
Great, thank you all. Yeah, and I mean, that's a great question. Like, is SPUR competitive? And I think the answer is yes. People want research experience and there's only so many positions to go around. And I would generally say that like, while it is competitive, I think the panelists are right. Like showing your enthusiasm and your interest in the project is really important. And then I also encourage you like, hey, you can apply for up to 3 for SPUR. So like apply for up to 3 for SPUR, like put your eggs in as many baskets as you can. You can also apply to URAP and you can apply for 3 projects there too. So while it may seem overwhelming to apply to 6 different projects in a 2-week span, like I totally hear you, but it will increase your chances of getting a spot. And then I would also say like for SPUR, I'm not sure about for URAP, but for SPUR, like we posted the projects back in like maybe mid-December. So like they were up and, you had time to look at them. So just know that moving forward that like, we'll usually post them before the application portals open. So you can kind of like poke around and like see what you're interested in and like maybe start a little pre-work on the materials. But yeah, I mean, I encourage you not to get discouraged. If you apply to projects this semester and you don't get a spot, we have SPUR happening every fall, spring, and summer. So like, please continue applying and utilizing the resources that our panelists all highlighted, right? Use the Career Center, use the resource and retention centers that Jordan highlighted, use your friends, right? Like a peer review will do wonders, having somebody else look at your work and proofread it. As a professional, I still have people read my stuff just to make sure that it looks good and, there aren't any typos, but yeah, please don't be discouraged. Keep trying to apply if you don't get a spot. Okay, I have another question of what is the difference between URAP and SPUR? Panelists, feel free to answer. If you don't, I know the answer. So if you want to, please. Okay, I can go ahead. So URAP is university-wide. So students from LNS, CED, chemistry, and our CNR engineering, they can all apply for projects through URAP. So that does make it more competitive, right? Because you have however many undergraduates at our university applying to these same projects, while SPUR is specifically just for CNR students. So a much smaller number, right? So CNR has like 2,500 students. Obviously not all of them are applying to these projects, but that does make it a little less competitive. And the CNR projects are all CNR faculty. So they're faculty within our own college, offering research opportunities. Okay, here's a fun question. What has been your favorite memory or favorite day when doing research?
I can answer this one. I would say the best memory is probably, when you're finally finished and you have the finished product and you're sharing it with your peers and the faculty advisor. I think it's really fun to, not only showcase what you've done this semester, but kind of reflect on what you like, any challenges you've kind of encountered or, so I think that's a really great experience that I had, and I'm sure many of you will have as well.
So because my lab doesn't have like a final project, it's just kind of like a day-to-day basis. One of my favorite days was last semester during, I think it was like the end of Dead Week. and everyone's pretty drained, finals are right around the corner. But coming in to just talk with my other SPUR, or like the other SPUR student that's in my lab, coming in to just talk before our appointments was really nice, because you were in different fields and stuff, but that same pressure of like finals week that we feel, but we're here at the lab right now. It's just like nice knowing that someone's in the same position as you. And so getting that connection was really nice. And it was one of my favorite days.
So for me, my favorite part was at the end of the semester, we had a research symposium. So that was like really fun. Like we had the people who like were the stakeholders in our research, they got come. And we also had the lab heads and then Dr. O'Neill there. So that was really fun to kind of like, present our findings and kind of like synthesize it. So yeah, because of the strike, we weren't able to do it in person, but normally it is in person. That's always a fun thing to do, I've heard.
Great, thank you all. So we have a question that says, if the project I'm interested in is listed under both SPUR and URAP, which one should I apply under? Go ahead, Jordan.
That's a really good question. First off, I would personally say probably do as under URAP. The reason being is because there are unique ones only, available to SPUR. So like make use of that just smaller, applicant pool, because it's just inherently URAP compared to SPUR, there's just gonna be less people applying to those. So like if SPUR is already competitive, just adding on people from other colleges, it's just kind of increasing your chances. Now, if there aren't many other SPUR projects that you're really interested in, then do it into SPUR. If there are other URAP and projects that you want to be interested in. So that's what I would say. It's a case-to-case basis. But if like there's like 7, 8 projects you're really interested in, I would just say put it in URAP so that you can make the most out of SPUR.
Yeah, thank you, Jordan. I would agree. I would not recommend applying to the same project in both URAP and SPUR, right? Like we want to spread our applications out and increase our chances of getting a position. So being strategic about the way in which you apply to projects. If you see more URAP projects that you want to apply to, maybe apply for it under SPUR and vice versa. Just being really intentional with the way you submit your applications. So I have a question here that is, what do you believe are the most important skills to know for research?
That's a really good question. I would say interpersonal communication skills. I think working in a lab is very team oriented. And so any skill that you've had or experience that you've had working in a team often is super helpful when working in a lab. You won't always be doing the work with someone else in that sense, but the communication and teamwork is definitely there. All the time in my experience with my lab.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think like interpersonal communication skills are always, and team skills are really important, especially whether you're in the lab or communicating with like the faculty. And if an issue comes up, you're able to problem solve. So I think those are 2 great ones, as well as like being really attention and detail oriented. So, making sure that everything's really, done to the best you can is also important. So that attention to detail.
First off, yeah, great question. I would say it depends, for example, if you're in like a bio lab or a nutrition lab, I'm no way in shape, form, qualified for that. That's more Monse's field. So like, I wouldn't be able to do something like that. So just having background knowledge in the lab probably is very important. But other than that, always being able to analyze data is like something that applies very well to anywhere you go. So whether that be if you're like a freshman or sophomore and you have to take a stat class, I would highly recommend maybe you might be like, I don't like programming, or like, I don't want to do that. I would recommend like taking probably a data 8. The reason being is because being able to say that you have at least a rudimentary or cursory knowledge of programming is always a great thing to do, because I know at least in my research we were dealing with ice packs, right? But however, being able to use Python for like simulation and stuff like that, that actually turned out to be very, very big for us. So that's always something that you can always, differentiate yourself from the applicant pool. So like that's something I'd recommend, is that it depends on the project, but being able to analyze data is always a big thing in any research field. So yeah, and also being able to visualize it.
Great, thank you. Another question is, how important is GPA when applying to research?
I don't think it's super important. You just have to meet a minimum. Is that correct? Yeah, so is it 2.0? I can't remember.
Yeah, the minimum is a 2.0 GPA.
Right, okay, yeah, so I think the minimum, or she confirmed, Sarah confirmed the minimum is 2.0. But I don't think there's any preference for you having a higher or a lower GPA. In my experience, I had just come out of a semester with my worst GPA. And I was thankfully still chosen for the project. So don't stress about it too much. Ultimately, as long as you complete that requirement of above a 2.0, you should be fine.
Great, thank you. Okay, and our last question, are there wait lists for SPUR projects? And if someone applies to 3 and gets a spot in all of them, but only takes 1, will there be people to put into the spots if they're turned down? So I can take this one. So students are only allowed to work on 1 SPUR project in a semester. So if a person gets multiple offers, they have to pick 1. And then yes, the faculty will move down their list of students. So don't worry, nobody will take all 3 of the research spots that they apply to. I make sure of it. Okay, great. And that was the last question that we had time for today. I want to thank you all for joining us. I want to thank our fabulous panelists for sharing all of their experience and their wisdom. I really appreciated everything you guys said today. Like I said, SPUR closes on January 25th at 5 p.m. So make sure to get those applications submitted and to utilize your resources on campus to get your materials to a place where you feel comfortable submitting. And if you are experiencing any issues or difficulty or just have other questions that maybe we weren't able to answer today, you can email me at spur@berkeley.edu. Thank you all.